I'll turn now to Michael, who will give us a bit of the science behind the poison. So what does science tell us about disinformation, and might we be looking at the wrong places?
Yes. All right. Thank you, Nicholas. Excellent question. Something that I hope to tackle with this this presentation, which is, yeah, it's disinformation, but I think what research is showing is that it's not about fake news. There's something else, a bigger part of the story that I'll talk to you about as we move along. So what does science actually tell us about disinformation? Most of the research is just coming out now from the US election when this topic was really hot. And it tends to focus on the US context. So when other studies emerge, I will present them. But the main question people ask is, how much disinformation is out there on social media? And the answer is not a lot. If we look at Twitter, 1% of the political news that the average American consumes is false. That may sound 1%, maybe is too much. Keep in mind that's part of the news that's on Twitter. So this is a subset of the overall conversation. On Facebook, 8.5% of Americans have shared a fake news story. Again, sounds like a lot, but the majority only share one story in the context of everything they're sharing on Facebook. And as Geisha mentioned, it tends to be concentrated among those who are over 65 and those who lean right-wing, which tend to correlate as well. Lastly, if we look at the Russian Internet Research Agency, which I'll talk more about in a second, 6% of the links that the IRA shared were explicit fake news, false. They shared another 30% that was real news, but through fake accounts. So together, this tells me that the problem isn't really about fake news. What I've been looking at in my research is sock puppets, or these guys. And what a sock puppet is an impersonated account. So it's creating a false identity that is then used to spread rumors or disinformation or commit fraud. If you've seen the MTV show Catfish, this is what people have been doing in order to find romantic partners. They steal pictures of people more attractive to themselves and use that to deceive others into getting into conversations and relationships with them. This is the idea of sock puppets. So I've been doing some research in this area over the past couple of years. This is one paper that I was working on looking at how foreign spies basically use social media in order to steal information and to conduct cyber attacks. So these are some pictures from some Chinese spies who use LinkedIn, which is a very good platform to connect with people working in governments and policy and trick them and carry the conversation on different platforms and then send them software that will break into that network. Another study, this is a very fun one. I created a fake news bot. That's the DC News Report, mimicked to look just like the Washington Post, and it sent breaking news links to Americans during the midterms. Happy to talk about that in the Q&A. But yeah, maybe people don't read academic papers, but these are fun, I can promise you, and quite interesting. But in the course of this research, I've come across some conceptual issues. The first is that existing research, media reporting, and governments typically focus on content from fictitious news sources. So they look at outlets, accounts that are created to promote fake news. They're not looking at citizens or fake citizens, sock puppets, that are also spreading this type of information. And I think this explains why we find low amounts of disinformation on Facebook and Twitter, because you're looking at fake news outlets, not people who are impersonating other citizens. The academic research would lead us to suggest that these type of sock puppet accounts are more persuasive than fake news. Why? Because trust in social media, trust in news that people come across on social media is low across the West. There's no convincing evidence that I've seen that disinformation, just being exposed to it, changes anyone's political opinion whatsoever. But we know that the information shared by peers, or your friends, on social media is persuasive. So some colleagues and I have been working on what we call the network disinformation model. And here you have a troll, in this case a Norwegian troll, who uses a sock puppet identity to get someone to share something to their network. And it's that part that's persuasive and powerful, not so much what someone retweets, but when someone sees information from someone they know and trust, that's when that disinformation becomes cool. So we recently conducted a study looking at the IRA, the Russian troll farm, one of many, on Twitter. where we asked a few questions, such as what were the main identities they were adopting during the US election, what topics did they discuss, and which were the most successful. So there's been a couple researchers that have been looking at this data set, and if you look to the left, two researchers at Clemson University, Linville and Warren, they categorized these Russian troll accounts into 5 groups: right-wing trolls, left-wing trolls, news feeds, this is your fake news accounts, fear-mongers who were spreading just outright conspiracy theories, and then hashtag gamers is kind of a fun one. These are accounts that would try to start hashtag games, such as hashtag I get depressed when, so that other people would also hashtag and sort of get involved, or hashtag election in 3 words. People would then put their 3 words into the hashtag. So when we were looking at these categories, we came up with a very similar categorization, but notably, instead of treating what we call Black activists, these are people who are promoting Black Lives Matter and causes like that, we didn't put them in the left troll category. We separated them because we thought there was something different, and I'll get back to that. Here are the tweets that the IRA sent by these coded user accounts. So we see the majority of them are non-English. Then we have the sort of fake news spreaders, or the fake accounts that were spreading real news, and right trolls. So what this tells us is that when it comes to English tweets, the IRA was targeting mostly to spread fake news and also to connect with right-wing conservatives. And here's our black troll category. Not so much tweets were sent, but if we look at the tweets that actually got some engagement, so they got 1 retweet, like, or reply, the black troll category becomes the most effective at getting engagement, followed by the right-wing trolls, the hashtag gamers, the left-wing trolls, and then the news feed. So that's a nice first shot, but won't fly in peer review. So we went a bit deeper. We said, which sock puppet categories garnered the most engagement? We looked at the retweets, likes, and replies, did a bunch of statistics I'm not going to get into here. And here you have the data. I know probably not all of you are familiar with regression tables, but the findings show that black trolls were the strongest predictor for driving engagement. So tweets that came from impersonated Black identities were the most likely to be retweeted. Left trolls and right trolls, same thing, less strong of an effect, but these were likely to get engagement. And what's interesting is the table to your right, no, your left, model 2, this is from the previous study that put black trolls and left trolls together. And they said, we find that the left trolls are getting a lot of the engagement. But when we reran these statistics by taking the left trolls out, we found that it's the left trolls that are actually driving the engagement from what they found on the left. So these black trolls are a really powerful predictor for engagement. But the most interesting finding is the news feed, the fake news, did not garner engagement at any statistically significant level. So I'll return to that. Let's look at the like model. Same thing. All 3 of our identity categories, black trolls, left trolls, and right trolls, were positive and strong predictors for people to engage with that content. Again, newsfeed had little to no effect. So what this leads us to conclude is that the IRA mostly impersonated news outlets and right-wing citizens. This is what they were pushing out content. But in terms of what people reacted to, they reacted mostly to sock puppets posing as identities, most strongly the Black identities, but also right-wing and left-wing. So let me reiterate that Twitter users reacted least to fake news. And what this leads us to conclude is that current approaches that focus on how much fake news is online, they're A, underestimating the amount of disinformation that's out there, and B, they're not looking at the type of disinformation that we would find to be effective based on prior academic research. So with that said, I'll conclude with a short plug to the podcast. Thank you for mentioning. Feel free to check it out. There's lots of resources to take outside of this excellent panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.